Okay, welcome back to part 2 of our chat agent. We are going to be introducing a much more human approach to typing this time, sending our messages. Our previous iteration was essentially instantly copying and pasting text, and that's not very human-like behavior. Our goal is to make this as close to human-like behavior as possible, so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is, when we start chatting, I don't want to ever have any instantaneous operations. So I don't want to hit the enter key and then instantly start typing and instantly type the next key. So we want to introduce some randomized time delays. That's why we've introduced the random and time library in the previous session. So after we initialize the chat by pressing the enter key, we're going to create a random sleep time. And I'm going to call random.random. This will give me a value between 0 and 1. And I'm going to take that number, I'm going to divide it by 3.0 because I don't want it to be very long. I don't want a whole 1 second delay. I want maybe maximum about 1/3 of a second or so. And then I'm going to add to that 0.1. And the reason is that if by chance the random generator generates 0, I still want to make sure that we have at least something like around 0.1 second delay. So this will give me maximum around 0.43 seconds if, this is maximum 1 plus 1 divided by 3 here, plus the 0.1. Or if this was 0, this will give me a 0.1 second delay. So it's going to be randomized. There's going to be a random delay here, but it'll never be exactly 0, which is good. And we want to do a time.sleep, so we will sleep for that amount of time. Okay. So that basically ends this first section, so that was pretty easy. So next, we're going to go into our calling of the chat group or the chat type. And this is where in the previous session, we created this placeholder variable current chat type, but we didn't use it yet. So this is where, if we're already in the party chat or the guild chat, we don't want to keep re-entering it. You're not going to type join party and then, every time you send a message, you're going to join it. And then after that, you're just going to chat. If you switch, then of course you're going to do that. So this is how we're going to keep track of that, and we'll switch when necessary. So what we're going to say here is, if chat type, so this is our new chat type, does not equal the current chat type, then I want to, let me bring this down. So if the current chat type does not equal the current chat type, then I want to execute this command. Then I want to switch channels. And after I switch channels, I want to set self.current chat type equal to this new chat type so that we can remember the channel we just switched to. Now, similar to the previous section, we want to add some delay here, some randomized delay. So let's do that as well. So we're going to do a random type time equals to random.random plus 0.1. So in this case, I don't want to have a delay to maybe execute a sleep and wait. I'm going to be introducing a delay now, or a time to type out these characters. Now it's only 2 characters, so I'm going to make this pretty short. I might divide this by 4.0. So it'll be somewhere between a 1/4 second and half a second. And the reason is when we type out like /s/p, it takes some amount of time to do that. It's not going to be instant. Even though it's just 2 characters, it still shouldn't be instant. So the typewrite command has a optional parameter called interval. And if we change the interval to this random type time, it's going to take this amount of time to type these characters. So for example, if I had to type /s over a period of half of a second, it's going to take roughly a 1/4 second to type each character. So we're going to use a pretty small number here to type out 2 characters, and it's going to be a little bit randomized, so it'll never type exactly the same every time we run this. Okay, and then after we do this command, we want to do a similar sleep where we sleep again before we go into the next section of our chain here. So we're going to say random_sleep time. So we can reuse this variable again. We're going to create a new random number again. Let's do random.random. And we'll do the same. We'll do 3.0 plus 0.1. So again, this is going to give us a similar random sleep as before. And we'll do time.sleep, and we'll pop that back in there. So again, this will just give us a randomized sleep time before we go to the message part. Okay, so those are looking pretty good. Okay, so now we're going to get to kind of the interesting part. So the message. So we want to introduce a randomized time to type out the message. We don't want the message to be instant, and we want it to have a certain amount of time. Now, if we put a time on a whole string, if we say, here's your whole message, it could be 1 word, it could be 100 words, and here's the time to type it out, that means every character is going to be identical. Every character in your message is going to have the same amount of time, since that time is assigned across that whole message. So what we can also do is we can split the message up into words, and we can randomize the time it takes to type each word a little bit. So it not only is the time to enter the message randomized and the character time randomized, but it actually is split up by each word. And you could actually even go to each character if you really wanted to get crazy. But we'll just do it by each word. And this will give it a much more natural feeling. You're gonna see speeding up and slowing down as the agent is typing things out, just like a human would. So that's what we're going to try to copy here, the human behavior. So the first thing we're going to do is we want to split our message up into words. So we're going to say words equals message.split. So we're going to split this up into a list, and we want to split it by space. So every word is going to be separated by a space, or it should be, and we will split that up into a list. Okay, next we're going to iterate through this list. So we're going to say for I in range 0 to length of words -1. So we're going to go through that whole list, index by index. And I'm using indexes here because I want to make sure when we arrive at the end of this that we don't add an additional space. You'll see in a moment. So for every time we do this, we want to create a random type time. So this way, every word will have its own randomized type time. And we're going to do the same thing as before. So we're going to do random, but this time I'm going to use random int. So I've been playing with this. There may be different or cleaner ways to implement this. I was just experimenting here, and I might need to refine this just to make it a little more intuitive, but this works pretty good for what we're doing today. So it's going to pick an integer between 4 and 7. This gives us a little bit of variation, but not a huge variation. You don't want the thing to go very slow on some words and very fast on other words. That's also not natural. We want this thing to speed up and slow down, but within a reasonable amount. And then I'm going to scale this down since it's going to be based on the character speed. We want this to be a lot faster. We don't want 4 seconds per character. That's way too slow. So we're going to speed that up. And then we're going to normalize this by the length of the word. And the reason we're doing that is if we have a we got to do words. We got to make word here. So word is going to be equal to words I. So that's going to be our word. Okay. So, and the reason we're going to be normalizing this for the word length is imagine we have a randomized time that's very long and we have a very short word like a or the. It's going to type that out super slow. Or imagine if we had a very long randomized time, or a very short randomized time, rather, but an extremely long word. It's going to just spit that out instantly. So we want to make sure that we randomize the time, but we also correct it for the length of the word so that longer words take a longer amount of time. So after we do that, instead of writing our message, we want to type write the word. Okay, so we're going to type out this word randomized over this period of time. Next, what we want to do is if I equals the length of words -1. So if we're at the last index, we don't want to add a space. Oh, I'm sorry, not equal to. So if we're not at the last index, we want to add a space to the since we took out all the spaces. We split our string up by using spaces. So we've got to type the spaces back in. We're going to type in our word randomly, and then we're going to type in a space. So we're going to do, maybe we'll do time.sleep 0.005. So maybe we'll do a very small sleep here, and we could randomize this. I'll just put this in statically for right now. And then we'll do pyautogy.press, and we'll press the space key. That'll enter a space for us. Okay. And then finally, after that happens, we want to probably have another sleep before we press the enter key, because after you're done typing, you don't instantly press the enter key. So let's do a random sleep time. And this time, we're going to do a random.random. So again, this will give us a value between 0 and 1. And we'll add 0.1 so that it's never 0. And maybe I'll divide this by 2.0. So we'll get somewhere between 0.1 seconds and 0.6 seconds, roughly. And it'll press enter. So let's try this out and see how this is looking with this randomized timing. We should be starting to get something that's getting much closer to human-like behavior. Okay, and I'm sorry, I just realized that I had a typo in here. We actually have a small bug that we need to fix before we run this. So if we go back to our loop, I had range 0 to length of words -1. The range function is not inclusive of the right-hand side, so that actually left out the last index, so we need to remove that -1. So make sure you remove that. And now let's try this function. Okay, so I realized why that wasn't working quite the way I was expecting it to. We actually have another bug. And maybe you already caught this. If you did, good for you. So when we created this randomized variable, and I was surprised because I thought this range was pretty reasonable, but we didn't actually put it into the typewrite function. So it never actually types those words out slower. It just instantly pops them out. That's why it was acting so strange. So let's make sure we set our interval to this random type time that we've created here. And let's try it again now that we've worked out that bug. Okay, there we go. Now it's typing a lot more natural. And you can see how the first time it switches to the say channel. But once it knows that it's in the say channel, it just hits the enter key and it keeps chatting. And it's chatting in a very natural way. Here, I'll run that again so you can see how that works. So the first time, it's going to switch to the say channel, and it's going to type it out and hit enter. And then the second time, it hits enter a second time to open the chat and close the chat. That's why you see those extra enters there, extra white spaces. But it doesn't switch channels because it knows it's in the say channel, and we didn't ask it to switch channels. So if we added one more line of code, let's say I added a hello world at the end one more time, and this time let me delete this stuff. This will give us an error when we try to run. And let's add some of our parameters. So we have chat type equals, so let's do chat type dot, let's switch to party. And let's do lower equals true. So this should give us all lowercase. And we should see it switch to the party chat now. So let's give this a try. Okay, so it's typing down here. I got it in my console. So that looks good. And now this last one, it should type it out in a way that should give us the party chat. There you go. So it switched to party chat and then hello world, all in lowercase. So that looks good. And I'm stuck in the console here. Okay, let me clear that. Okay, so what we've done today is we've taken our agent before that was just basically spurting out text, and we've introduced randomized timing to give it a much more human-like appearance. So in our next session, we're going to start introducing things like errors and typos and things like that are going to make this even more human-like. And it'll start to get difficult. It'd be difficult to distinguish between a person typing this and a computer. And of course, we can go back, and you can modify these values to make them act in a way that you think is better, more human-like. And keep in mind, another thing that we could do is we could create profiles. So for example, we could set all these variables up as settings. So for example, we could have a grandma, and we could have a drunk guy, And grandma might type really, really slow, and she might always capitalize her words, and she might always use punctuation. That's another thing we could do is we could do a remove all punctuation function for people that type kind of informally. They never use periods and things like that. So grandma might always type slow. She might always capitalize and use punctuation. She might always, or most of the time, she might correct her mistakes. Versus drunk guy, which might have a 25% chance to hit the wrong character, and he might be all over the place. Versus kid, who might not use punctuation. So you could set up profiles to make this behave like different types of people as well. So keep that in mind. So in the next session, we are going to introduce typos and errors and things like that. So hope to see you in the next session. Thanks. Bye.